Welcome to Turn the Page podcast with Alyssa and Leah, a podcast where we share our love of children's literature and help you create page turners.
On today's episode, we'll talk about books that will help you build your child's emotional intelligence. Social emotional learning, or SEL, is a really big topic in schools right now. And today we are going to introduce you to some books that are a great way to build your child's emotional intelligence at home.
You go first.
Okay, I'll go first. All right, my first book I brought is Stand Tall, Molly Lou Mellon, and it's by Patti LaBelle. And this book is part of a series. There's other Molly Lou Mellon
Yes,
books.
I almost picked another one.
Oh, did you? Okay. So I love Molly Lou Mellon, but Molly Lou Mellon is an itty bitty girl. And at the beginning of this book, it talks about things that her grandmother tells her, little snippets of advice. Like one of the first one is walk as proudly as you can and the world will look up to you. And so Molly Lou Mellon does. And then in the middle of the book, Molly has to move to a new school away from her grandmother. And as soon as she gets to the new school, you can kind of see the look on her face getting on the bus. It is challenging for her. And one little boy is just kind of relentless and calls her mean names, but she continues to follow her grandmother's advice and does the things that her grandmother has taught her and doesn't let the bully get to her. And by the end, obviously, he comes around. And then at the end, she writes a letter to her grandmother telling her that everything she said was exactly right.
Oh,
I picked this book because I think it's a really great book that talks about your child's inner voice. And I am always telling my child and my students that sometimes you have to block out the noise and remember what you know is true about yourself. Things are not always going to go great, but if we can build our children's inner voice and let them have a strong inner voice, I think that helps them to, be emotionally intelligent and then handle the things that come at them.
yeah. And Lou Mellon, there's, I guess, several books. I know of definitely one other, the one that I was gonna pick, and it's a great SEL book too. So I think any of her books, it's all about her learning things about the world, and it's just a great read.
I love it.
And
She's
kids
so
love
cute.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole series, it looks like.
Okay. So, my first book is called I feel like it's a little similar to yours, The Smallest Girl in the Smallest Grade. Um, it's written by Justin Roberts. So this is about a little girl, and it just says smallest girl in the smallest grade, so I don't know exactly what grade she's in, but she goes throughout her days, just observing everything she sees, and what she sees is not always good.
Okay.
And so, but no one really pays attention to her because she's so small. And so she can see people saying unkind things or like throwing trash on the ground. And she's just observing everything until one day in the lunchroom, she gets fed up and I think she throws her tray down and she starts yelling at everyone. And she's like, stop what you're doing. And she tells everyone that they need to be conscious of the way that they're doing things, making sure they're not throwing trash on the ground and making sure they're being kind to everyone. So she kind of has like a meltdown where and everyone's paying attention to her finally. Um, and then from then on, people are more conscious. I guess it's about the smaller things where you think it might not be a big deal, but to someone else it is, or over time it is. So it's about noticing like the small things that we do. And it's just really great. It's a cute book. Kids love it. It's a great read. Um, to start thinking about how you're interacting with people and what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think about like your impact too in the world. Even if you're the smallest girl in the smallest grade,
Right.
you can make a difference. And so years ago, our school went through a training of the 7 habits.
Mhm.
Leah and I both did it together. And I feel like this goes a lot with the first habit about being proactive because even if you are the smallest girl in the smallest grade, you have influence and you can
Right.
use that influence to bring about change.
Right. Right. And she
Some I've always felt like I could be the smallest girl in the smallest grade, but I can do whatever I want to do. And as a fourth grader, I wrote a petition, my first petition about someone being bullied. And then later I had another petition about not selling goldfish and baggies
I love that.
at our school fair because they were dying and people were just leaving their baggies of goldfish around
Makes
the
a
gate.
difference.
And I made a difference. My elementary school does not have goldfish and baggies anymore. So I do think that that's powerful for kids because sometimes they can feel helpless at school, but like teaching them how to be little activists,
Yeah.
I think that's a great choice. I've
I
never
like
read
that.
that book, so it's definitely one I want to read. My next one called The Energy Bus. The Energy Bus is actually a book for adults, but this is The Energy Bus for kids. And it is a book that teaches kids how to have a positive outlook on the world and overcome challenges. So, on the Energy Bus, one of the students, he is having a rough day and he misses the bus and gets on the wrong bus. But luckily, this bus's driver, Joy, teaches him some rules that will help him change his life. And I think it's a good one for kids that maybe don't have a positive outlook on life. And it just gives you some practical tips. So, like, the first one is to create a positive vision and start each day thinking that it's going to go great. And I think this is a great habit you could practice.
Mhm.
The next one is fuel your ride with positive energy. So even if things happen to you throughout the day, if you have enough positive energy to get you through the day, that you'll be okay. No bullies allowed. Obviously, that speaks for itself. And then love your passengers. So love the people that are riding along with you. And then enjoy the ride and, about enjoying your life. And I feel like it's just a good one for kids because it's very much things they can relate to, but it's also a good one just to remind them of those rules. I read this with Carmel because sometimes she tends to be negative.
Yeah, I think that a lot of teachers would find a good use for this, especially if the students are kind of just like in a funky mood. And sometimes we have that and we need to just say like, "Hey, you are in control of this and this is how you make your own happiness."
Absolutely. And it's by John Gordon, who wrote the adult book too. So like his book has like 10 rules for adults and it's like a New York Times bestseller. So I just think it's good, start that young and then maybe kids will need
Yeah.
the adult help self-help books because they're learning those skills as children. All right, what's your next one?
All right. So my next one is a book that we read in class. It's part of our curriculum. And I've just fallen in love with it. It's called Feelings, and it goes through a bunch of different feelings. So it's like I would say different scenarios throughout the book. And so for every emotion that a kid could have, and it's a fun read because you can act out these feelings while you're reading it and you can have a great conversation with some of the things. So one of my favorite ones is they have a little boy and he's building a tower with blocks. And it's just a lot of them are just pictures and they have like captions. And so you see him building blocks and it says like what Tom did. And it's just this spectacular tower. And all the kids are loving it and they have little captions. Oh, it looks so great. How did you build it that tall? And they're
Yeah.
just like building out. And then on the next page, it says what John did and John knocked over the tower. And so then all the kids start kind of just like downing John and like, why'd you do that? That made Tom feel so bad and kind of things like that. And these are scenarios that kids are going through. So it gives you a time to talk about these things. Um, and the whole book is like that. And it's a fun read for young kids because like I said, you can act it out. So it's kind of interactive
Yeah.
in that way. But the whole book is just different scenarios. And it's a lot of fun to read with a whole class.
And do they name the feeling?
Not throughout the book, but there is one page where it's like, show me mad. And then the other character does like a mad face, show me happy. and then it goes through all those. So there are some things, and that's what we do. We like in where I'm saying like, how do you think this kid feels in this scenario? And then show me, and everyone does it. And so yeah,
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's really great. I think the more feelings kids can name, the better they are equipped to handle situations because, sometimes they come to us and they really only know like happy, mad, sad.
yeah,
And there's so many more feelings than that.
right,
And I think that that can be powerful.
yeah. Well, it also talks about, like, what changes our feelings too, like, maybe we see something that makes us happy, so not only or maybe we say something to our friends that make them sad, and so we talk about how our feelings change and what causes that, so goes a little bit deeper than just what are feelings. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I think it's a great read for first grade, but probably like can be expanded even older kids that are having some feeling
Yeah.
issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
Validates them. All right. My next one is spaghetti and a hot dog bun, having the courage to be who you are. So this book is about Lucy and her Papagino eat some interesting food at their home. So all the other kids at her school, she talks about eat peanut butter and jelly on toast, but she eats ketchup on toast. And one of her favorite foods is spaghetti in a hot dog bun. That's what she eats when they have spaghetti the night before. She eats spaghetti in a hot dog
Oh,
bun for her lunch the next day. And she is, of course, she encounters a bully named Ralph, and Ralph is like relentless in the story. He is just really mean to her. He's mean to her on the bus, he's mean to her in class. And then she goes home and she's like clearly internalizing the feelings. And she's like, the grandpa is like, you can talk to me if something's not right. We can fix it together. But instead, she's just sitting there worried about it as she's going to bed. And then the next day he gives her a dog bone because he's making fun of the way she eats. Yeah, it's like pretty bad. And so then at recess, she is like freaking out, asking herself what she should do over and over because she's afraid to be a tattletale, which I think is just a great thing to bring up as a teacher and as a parent with your kid is like, when are you being a tattletale? And when are you telling the teacher something that needs to be told?
mhm.
And then someone comes out and starts yelling because a child is stuck on the monkey bars, and it turns out it's Ralph. So she's like, this is my chance. I'm going to go tell him how mean he is and he's going to leave me alone. But when she gets there, she tells him, but she can tell that by the look on his face that he is very worried. So he tells her he's scared and she helps him. And that kind of repairs their relationship. And he gives her a picture the next day as, I guess, sort of an apology. And then he stops being mean to her. But she's also proud of herself because he was mean to her. And even though he was in trouble, that she helped him.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a great book to like tell kids about being unique and being special. And that's like the message. They even have the little things to you're out of this world special and it's little like sayings about yourself. But I think it's also a good book of to talk about, when are you being a tattletale? When is it maybe a good time to tell your grandfather or tell the teacher and not just
Mhm.
keep those things to yourself? And then also a lesson of sometimes the bullies are just as scared as everybody else is.
Yeah.
And, just because someone's mean to you doesn't mean you have to be mean back.
Yeah, I think that's a hard message in school, and, I mean, of course, I want all bullying, so, like, if there is a situation where a kid is not being mean, I mean, is being mean, I would hope that kids can repair a relationship. It can't always happen, but to see, like, their perspective or, like, why this behavior is happening is, like, a good thing too, is to kind of see, like, put yourself in other people's shoes.
Yeah, and I think, like, as a parent to talk to your kid about, when the grandfather's asking her and she's, like, not telling him, like, why do you think she's not saying anything? Do you think that maybe she should? Because it's easier to talk about a
Yeah,
situation when you're not going through it. Like,
yeah,
it's normal to internalize some of that, but then it also would be great if our kids didn't,
yeah,
because through talking about it, I think they gain some power back.
yeah.
But He does come around in the end, and that's always nice to see when the bully
Right.
comes around at the
Yeah.
end, so
I haven't read that one, and I like it. Um, my next book is How Full Is Your Bucket? So this is a
this is my next book too.
great, we'll both talk about it. So this is, I feel like, pretty mainstream book, especially for teachers. A lot of teachers are going to know about this one. So it starts off with a brother and a sister, and they're not getting along, and the brother's not being kind, and then the sister reacts, and they're just not getting along. And so is it the grandpa says, "All right, well, let's think about it like this. Are you filling her bucket or are you dipping?"
Yep.
And so the little boy's like, "What are you talking about?" And so the grandpa's like, "Well, imagine everyone has this invisible bucket, and we can either be nice to people and fill their buckets, or we're gonna not care about their feelings and then we're dipping in their buckets." It's not always people who are dipping in our buckets. Maybe our buckets aren't full for lots of reasons, but are we filling buckets?
Correct. Yeah, and do we have enough in our bucket for the situations where the bucket drips?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love this one. My child's kindergarten teacher, shout out to Miss Anna, read this on the first day of school or in the first week of school, and she came home talking about it. I think
Yeah.
it's a great vocabulary for kids to have because they're talking about something that's intangible in a tangible way.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's like, are you taking the time to say kind things to people? And are people taking the time to do that to you? And what are the things that fill your bucket? Because it's good for them to know that. And then also, of course, sometimes young kids tend to be bucket dippers unintentionally. And so if they're unintentionally dipping in people's bucket or causing people's buckets to drip, how can they maybe turn that around and what's a better way to do it? And then I love at the end too, Leah, when he starts filling other people's buckets because he knows what fills his bucket. And then he realizes every time he fills someone else's bucket that his bucket also gets a drip. Because I think that's like super powerful that like by filling other people's buckets, you're also filling your own bucket.
Right. It's a good message for all.
Yes, this is a book we have chosen to share with our entire school this year, um, through our houses, because I think this is a powerful thing if a lot of people can use this vocabulary. And I think it's absolutely true that everybody does have this invisible bucket.
Yeah.
And you can't pour from an empty bucket.
So my next one is, what if everybody did that?
Love this book.
Oh, I'm so glad. Okay, so this book came about because I was having issues with my class and I looked something up at one day, and this is what came up. What if everybody did that? So this book goes through different scenarios of things that may seem small, but if everybody did it, they would be big. Some things are big though, like throwing trash out of your window.
Yeah.
That is kind of big. However, it talks about what if you throw trash on the ground? What if everybody did that? They're in a restaurant. Another scenario is when they're in a restaurant and someone shoots a paper straw, and the waiter looks at him and says, "What if everybody did that?" And the illustrations are fun because in the illustration, you see everyone throwing the paper straw, and it's funny for kids. And so the different scenarios go through, and the boy learns that what may seem not a big deal to him, if everyone did it, it is a big deal. So I love to read this with my class, especially when everyone wants to shout out an answer. I always refer to this throughout the year. What if everybody did that? Or if a kid wants to get up and start twirling around the classroom, may not seem like a big deal, but if everyone got out of their seats and did that, it would be a big deal. You're disrupting the whole class. So I that's the way I use it in my classroom, but I think that this is fun for everyone. It's a silly read. The illustrations are great and the premise is funny.
Yeah. I love this one. I think for all the reasons you said, like this is just a great read. I think it's should be required reading for the morals. Because sometimes I just wonder when people do things like, what if
Right.
anybody did that?
Right.
Like cutting the carpool line or, I'm like, some of our parents, I'm just like, here's a copy.
Yeah.
Just because the majority of people aren't doing that thing, but
Right.
even if one person does something like throwing trash out their window, it ruins the world a little bit. And if everybody did that, it would just be terrible. And
Yeah.
I just think it's a great read. I think kids do find it funny.
Yeah.
I used to have mine come up with their own
Oh, that's
drop, sure,
yeah, I like that.
because they can always come up with like other funny things.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
cutting in line. I don't really necessarily like I will tell kids like that's not that big of a deal. We're all going to the same place.
Yeah.
But it does
Tell that.
cause some disorder. And it's just like, well, what if everybody did that?
Yeah.
You don't need to cut in line.
It's a great way to then, like, carry it on if you of unwanted behavior in in anyone's life. You just remind them, "What if everybody did that?" And then they can see a different perspective of whatever they're doing.
Yes, I love that one. All right. So this one I changed last minute to
Oh,
The Bad Seed. I love this book. And so this book, The Bad Seed, is about a seed. And everybody sees him. He's a sunflower seed. And everyone's
mhm.
like, that is a bad seed. And he knows he's a bad seed. He says, like, I'm a bad seed. And when he's going down the street, they're like, ooh, there's that bad seed. And he like is like, how bad am I? And then he talks about the things he does that make him a bad seed. So he never puts shopping carts back. He's always late. He cuts in line. He lies about pointless stuff. He's just a bad seed. And so he talks about when he was little, how it started. So like he used to be on a sunflower and he wasn't bad yet. But then the petals drooped and they got packaged into sunflower seeds and everything went dark. And then a giant spit him out. And then he became a bad seed because he was spit out at the last possible second. He just been bad ever since. Um, and the illustrations, cute, 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 and just
Yeah.
funny. Uh, and he doesn't care that he's a bad seed. And so then one day he sees himself in a mirror and he decides to change. And he makes a big decision and he has decided he doesn't want to be a bad seed anymore and he is ready to be happy. And I think that's a great point because I don't think you can be happy and be like super bad, like that kind of gets in the way of your happiness.
Mhm.
And so then he talks about like he's still making mistakes. Like he's sure he forgets to listen and
Mhm.
sometimes he accidentally shows up late, but he is making an effort. So he now holds the door open for people and he says, please, and he smiles and then he's keeping on trying and he keeps thinking that maybe he's not a bad seed after
Mhm.
all. And then at the end, a seed said, hey, look, there goes that bad seed. And another seed said, actually, he's not bad anymore. And then he says, I heard that.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I have not read this book, but I've seen these books. Cause aren't there other ones that is like the sour grape?
Yes.
Okay, and I've admired them from afar. I've not picked one up, but I'm always intrigued when I see. So, I'm so excited that you had this one.
Yes,
It's
it's just really cute. And I love that thought. And I actually haven't read the other ones. I want to read the other ones
yeah.
because if they're like this one that like you can choose to be different. Cause I think that's powerful for kids.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to make the choice you're making. You can grow and you can learn from that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I love it because I just think that some kids, unfortunately, get labeled a certain way early on and then they internalize that and that is their
Yeah.
like reputation for themselves and I hate that
I
because
hate it.
I want them to be able to be whoever they want to be
Yes.
and it's also that good reminder of like don't have a kid internalize that, be careful
Right.
what you say and be mindful.
Yeah. We all need a start over. We all need a redo sometimes. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's very cute. I can't wait to read that one. Okay, so my last book is Enemy Pie. And I don't know if I've told you this, but like I don't love this one, but I do like it.
Okay, why don't you love it?
So okay, so Enemy Pie is about a little boy who gets a new neighbor and The new neighbor starts playing with his best friend, so immediately he doesn't like him because he's taking away his friend. And so he tells his dad, I have like this enemy. He's my enemy. I don't want to play with him. And the dad is like, well, I know what we can do. We can bake them an enemy pie. And like, that's not my immediate go to response of like, well, we'll get back at them. And I think that that is the initial message that I heard. That's not the message.
No.
So I always have like a little negative connotation with this, but it's not. It's a false one. So the dad is like, we're gonna make him an enemy pie. Go get some chewed up gum, go get some grass, go get some dirt, and they put like all these nasty things in this pie. And so, but then the dad says, well, before you can give your enemy the pie, you have to spend a whole day being nice to your enemy. So the boy then spends a whole day with the new neighbor, and he, of course, realizes he's not so bad. He's actually a great friend, and they have a great day. And then at dinner time, the dad is about to serve the enemy pie, and the boy is kind of like freaking out because he's like, no, he's not my enemy anymore. And he's like, don't eat that, don't eat that. And when he takes a bite, he's like, why don't you want me to eat it? It's a great pie. It tastes so good. And then he sees his dad eating it, and he realizes it's not an enemy pie. It's a regular pie.
Regular pie.
Yeah.
I love this, especially for like boys.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I also think like the dad kind of played a little joke on him.
Right, he did. So you have to get past that initial, it's not, but that's just my initial thoughts. Okay, but I know it's not. So of course I picked it because I read it all the time with my kids, like every year. Um, because I think the message of you have to get to know someone before you judge them is a message that every kid needs to hear.
Absolutely.
So I like to talk about that, but it is it is a great book.
Yeah, I love that one. I think we did it for literacy night one year. Enemy Pie was like that
Mhm.
choice, and I just think it's a cute book. And then it also is a great chance to have that discussion of, well, why don't we just make quick judgments about people and how can we do better? And I think kids making friends is one of the hardest things kids do, and we just gloss over it like it's easy. But as adults, like when we have to make new friends, if you're just dropped into a situation where you don't have friends, that is hard. And inherently, like kids struggle with that. And so I think anything that we can read to help make that an easier transition is really great. That is our SEL books for y'all. We hope you enjoyed them. We are going to have a special guest come tell us some more books.
I'm so excited about our special guest. So, um, if you're listening to this one first, you get to listen to our special guest right away next.
Yeah, they'll be dropped the same day.
Or you might be listening to our special guest and then listen to us. We'll continue talking about SEL books.
Yes, with one of the best. All right, Leah. So, what is making you turn the page?
All right, what's making me turn the page is I just started a sequel to a book we read in book club a long time ago.
Oh,
We read The Sanatorium. Do you remember?
yes, I do.
Okay.
There was a sequel.
There is a sequel. It's called The Retreat. And I was just kind of like in between and looking for a book to read. And The Sanatorium was on my shelf, and I knew that there was a sequel. So I just thought, well, I read that one. Let me read this one. So I'm not very far into it, but I really liked The Sanatorium. So I think I'm going to like The Retreat.
Yeah, that's perfect for like spooky season too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, so right now I am very into Christina Lauren. So one of our friends recommended Christina Lauren to me. It's actually two people, Christina and Lauren, and the friends that they write together.
Yeah.
So I read my first book I read by her, I read in 2 days, and now I'm on another one. So I read Love in Other Words, and they're like just the right amount of like spicy, but also just a good love story and rom-comish. And now I have moved on to her next book. So I'm excited.
Is it like a trilogy or?
She has a series.
Okay.
but that one is not. That one's a
Okay.
standalone.
Okay.
So I haven't started a series because I'm not ready to commit
Okay.
to another
Yeah.
series.
Or you can do like me and read them years apart.
Absolutely. Yeah. So do you have to have read yours back to back?
The San Andreas? No, I mean, we read that a long time ago.
But does it pick up right when it where it left off?
So it does mention it. I don't know if I just know this or it mentions it. It might mention like, I mean, doesn't the stories don't go together. They're standalone stories. She's a detective.
Yeah.
So she's on a new case.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I think that's perfect. That I like that
yeah.
kind of a sequel because
Yeah.
then you don't have to
Right.
read.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah. Great page turners though.
Great. Yeah. All right. So
Right.
thank you for listening to Turn the Page podcast with Alyssa and Leah. Please take a minute to follow us and leave a review. We do have a lot of people that have rated us, but we are looking for a review. So we really appreciate if you would type out a review for us.
Speaking of hearing from you, we'd love for you to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram at @turnthepage_podcast or Turn the Page Podcast on Facebook.
All right. Head over to Instagram and we'll see you there. Bye, y'all.